off, specifically if you have conversations with other people.
So, recording has started. Okay, so should I start, Martin?
Yes, please.
Okay, wow, what a lovely gathering. It's a
Yes.
beautiful group. Many people I haven't had the chance to meet in the sessions, and some I know very well. And it seems from all over the world. So it's lovely to see you all. First of all, I must thank Martin so much for this opportunity. What you're doing, Martin, really is beyond description. We cannot appreciate enough all the love and effort and the knowledge you're presenting us with, and more than the knowledge, the experience of being together and knowing each other and spreading this love and wisdom around the world. So I must start by dedicating this to the love that Martin has spread around for all of us. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you. You're very kind.
From every one of us. And I've been asked by Martin and several people here to give this session. And I love doing this. The Enneagram and the Integral Model have both become an integral part of my life, and quite a journey, and I'll go through it briefly, but preparing the session has actually been, I mean, I enjoy giving sessions, but preparing the session has been quite of a challenge because of the huge breadth of the questions that have come. So initially, when I started preparing it, I was focused on the Enneagram in relationships, as maybe the title of the slide says. But then as the questions came in, it became clear that people are interested, yes, in Enneagram and relations, but also Enneagram and the spiral. And to some extent, Enneagram and the states of consciousness, which is actually my main interest, plus lots of other diverse questions. And in discussing with Martin how we can run this, we went through several phases until a sentence from Martin like clicked, which was, let's go for breadth more than depth. Now, that became something I can focus on. Still, the challenge was how to make it broad, but not too broad so that nothing makes sense, nor too narrow so that we lose some of the interests. So in this session, I'll try to balance both, touching on the Enneagram relationships, touching on the Enneagram and the spiral, and the Enneagram and the states of consciousness, and introducing basically my area of interest that has come up over the years, and giving a flavor of all of this. Now, please note that each one of these topics I teach in months. Right now, I have a very broad, I call it a journey, where it's made of 20-hour modules, and each topic we'll touch today is covered in a module or two. So it's like from 4 to 6 days. So this is just a flavor of each, but then at the end, I'll leave enough time at the end for questions and answers so that anything that I went through too fast and you are of interest in, we can go in a bit deeper. I also prepared a huge amount of slides so that any question that comes up or any idea that comes to me while I'm doing the presentation, I can go to. So again, the challenge has been the breadth while giving enough depth so that things still make sense. Let me first introduce myself and my journey to make things clear. Which perspective am I talking from? Which paradigm am I talking from? Originally, I'm a professor of engineering. I have a PhD in mechanical and aerospace engineering from West Virginia. I'm an Egyptian. And I have a master's in environmental engineering and sustainable energy. I have a master's in business administration. So I was actually a very, let's say, professional person, running on what I call the modern world treadmill, going from one degree to the other, going from one job to the other, one career to the other. For a long time, I was a university professor in the US, in Egypt, and part-time in some other places. I worked in corporate. I was R&D, Research and Development Director. For a while, I was the reference in R&D in Egypt, and nominated for being the Minister of Energy at one point when we had elections for a very brief moment after our 2011 revolution. And then all that changed. We're in a very different place right now. And so what I'm saying here is that there was this very professional life. But beside that professional life, there was always what I call some kind of longing. There was always this voice inside that was telling me, this is not it. There's something much greater to life than all you're running after. And all thanks to God, I was blessed to be able to succeed in whatever I was doing and reach the place where they were saying, this is where you will find satisfaction, and everything still didn't make sense. Until I would say around 2012, 2013, 2014, in that time, I went through what Stanislav Grof, if some of you know him, would call a spiritual emergency, spiritual crisis. I've always been very interested in psychology and in philosophy and in awareness. I didn't know what I was looking for. I would read them a while and come back, but at that time I just had to stop. I had to stop running on the treadmill. And I just left it all. I left the universities, I left the corporates, and I spent like a couple of years, I would say, searching or listening to the voice that's calling. And during that time, I discovered Reiki, and then I discovered NLP, and all of them were nice, but it really all made sense. Like everything I had read or studied or gone through in my life made sense when I discovered the integral model and the Enneagram. For me, they were much deeper, especially the Enneagram. I found in it something much deeper than the surface that was being presented. The 2-3 people that I heard the Enneagram first from were presenting it as a personality model, what I call the Enneagram of personality. And I remember from the very first session I took, the very first day, I stood up to the person who was giving the workshop and I told him, I think there's something much deeper and much greater than what you're presenting here, and I need to discover it. I was during that time in that calling, so I could listen to a guidance telling me go deeper. And since then until today, I have been uncovering layers after layers of the Enneagram. And I used to identify myself as an engineer, as a director, as whatever. Today I was asking myself, what would I identify myself with? And I think the only word that can come to me right now, I've never mentioned it before, but it was the word that was just flowing on my tongue today. I mean, I think right now I'm just a mystic that's just listening to things and just following his heart and channeling what Jung would say from the collective or from higher places. So, and I've had this contribution. I presented my models of the Enneagram with the states of consciousness, state stages, as Wilber would call them, and to some extent with the structure stages in some conferences, Enneagram conferences. I became an Enneagram accredited professional, and then with my lovely wife, Natasha, who's with us here on the call, who's always been supporting me along this journey, we started Enneagram Egypt, which became an accredited program and an accredited school. So we really took the Enneagram very serious. And through it, we created this Awaken Through Enneagram journey. And I always try to tell the people, although they call it an Enneagram journey, I tell them the Enneagram is the tool. The real thing is awaken. So it's an awakening journey for me. And that's why I just gave this presentation to note that you will find this mystic tone a lot in what I say. Yet I hope it touches everyone, even if you have nothing to do with mysticism, you're just coming to learn about Enneagram and relationships. I really hope you will come out with something from this session. So that's the introduction. And on the website, there's a blog where I haven't put much stuff, but you'll find some of my articles with some of the stuff that I have presented. Oh, I was putting some slides and I was pressing at the wrong place. So this is myself and Natasha, my lovely wife, and the accreditation logos of the school, and some of the pictures of the journeys we've been going through in different places. And over the last 6 months, we've moved almost everything online. Martin was actually asking me, where do you present it? I said, well, until now, the focus has actually been in Arabic, in the Arab world, and it's spread a lot. But we are seriously considering starting maybe something in 2021 in English, since the online has allowed us really to have an international reach. And again, Martin has a lot to do with this. It's his encouragement and his support, and also the model that he has given us. So really, we cannot be thankful enough, Martin, for everything. And this is the website and the mobile and the WhatsApp. And of course, you can take screenshots of any slides. Plus, I agreed with Martin that at the end, I will send him, he's free to distribute it also among the people here. So we will be sending some presentation, but you're free to take screenshots of any slides that you see. So that was the introduction. Good, on time. My plan is to have like 10 to 15 minute snapshots and then be open to the questions and check all the questions that have been sent. So the first part is factors affecting relationships from the perspective of the Enneagram. Actually, they are numerous, and that's why you will see that to cover relationships from an Enneagram perspective is a huge thing. The first and simplest is the intelligence centers, and we will talk about those a bit just after this slide. And then type to type. And actually, type to type might be one of the least factors when you look from the Enneagram perspective that affects relationships. And we will see why now in a moment. And then subtype to subtype. And for those not too familiar with the Enneagram, subtypes are the instincts when they mix with the Enneagram type. So when you have the instinct and the type, let's say, creating a variant of the type, they call it in the Enneagram books subtypes, although the accurate word would be type variant. So it's not really a subtype, it's a variation that happens on the type. And we will take a look at that in a moment. And then, and this is where I see the community with the questions that came, the community is most interested in, is the consciousness levels, the stage of development, the maturity levels. From a relationship perspective, I like to use the word maturity level. So it's not as much as consciousness as it is how mature a person have you become, how much have you worked on yourself to clean up your shadows, to clean up your reactiveness, how much capacity do you have to deal with others before you regress into the child within. This is, to me, the maturity level. We all try to be adults, but in a moment we flip and we become the child, the wounded child, the hurt child. So this is the maturity level. And the maturity level has so many dimensions. The structures are a dimension, what we call the spiral or the stages, and the states. And we will take a very brief look into all of this too. And then 3 topics that the Enneagram community has actually adapted from the world of psychology. These are the harmonic groups, how we create harmony in our life. When there is conflict, how do we deal with the conflict? The Hornevian groups, which from psychology refer to Karen Horney, one of the early psychologists who created a set of social styles. how we get what we want from the world and from those around us. And object relations, which deals with our relations to objects in our life, our affects, our main affects to objects in our life, and how we feel towards the objects of our life. Now, initially, when I was going to give this session purely about relationships, I was going to give it from these three groups: the harmonics, the Hornevians, and the object relations. But then when I found that most people are interested in the maturity levels, I put this aside, and maybe if people find value in this session, we can have another session related to these three. Because for me, these three are the core of relationships, actually, in addition to the subtypes. And then finally, a topic which I will not cover here, because again, it's purely from psychology, is the shadow, the Jungian shadow concept, and how it reflects also in the Enneagram types. So each topic of these has been taken from psychology and adopted under the Enneagram symbol, and in it, there's a whole world that has been created, and part of that would be relations under that topic. Of course, as you see, this is way beyond our capacity today. So I will be just building up step by step until we feel that the capacity is too much, and then we can maybe send the rest of the stuff or have another session for it, or as you wish. So let's start from the basics, the intelligence centers. The intelligence centers are the human brains that have evolved within us from the stages of evolution, from the earliest stages of having a nervous system. We all started with a very primitive sensing brain, a reptilian brain, a body brain. And this reptilian brain, at the core of our brain right now, and its energetic center found in what we call the gut. For those who are familiar with the Indian chakras, these would be the lower three chakras: the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus. All these are called the gut. And the energy in these three energy centers, with their neurons found at the center of the brain, inside the reptilian brain, that sensing brain at the depth, or what we call the body brain, is responsible for securing us in our environment at the moment. That brain does not know time, and it barely knows space. All it knows is, am I safe in my environment now or not? Later evolved a much more developed brain, the emotional brain, the mammalian brain. This is the cortex. And due to the complexity of the nervous system, the organism that came to life had to come out of whatever was holding it a bit premature. And it needed a time of holding, even after coming out to the world. So there had to be this power, this energy, to connect the parent to the child. And this is where this emotional connection, emotional bond started appearing. Of course, I'm ultra simplifying things. So the nerds here that are really precise, I know can hold a lot of points against me, I know that. But I'm just ultra simplifying to give this in 5 minutes. So this emotional brain is the bond brain. This is the brain that made us realize as mammals that there are other live beings. What's around us is not just objects, and that we can hold others in love, in compassion, in empathy. We can bond to those around us, and we can find our place in the community. So it is a brain of emotions, a brain of value, a brain of place, a brain of image. How do I see you and how do you see me? And finally came the thinking brain. And this is the very evolved brain. This is the primate brain. This is the brain that came through the primates up to the all the Homo species, the Homo habilis and the Homo erectus and etc., all the way until the Homo sapiens and the Homo sapiens sapiens, us. And then even after our species appeared, it continues to evolve. Humans today are very different than humans 3,000 years ago, very different than 10,000 years ago. And those who have been on the journey with Martin and have been through the spiral have seen at least the development, the cognitive complexity, the development of the human brain over the generations, from the beige to the purple to the red to the blue, etc. So that is just the development of the thinking brain. Now, these three brains are essential to understanding the Enneagram. If you skip these, then understanding the Enneagram is just putting people in boxes and creating judgments and making fun of others and creating excuses for yourself. As one of my very beloved teachers, Tom Condon, always says, the Enneagram is not a weapon and is not an excuse. If you don't know the depths of the Enneagram, it becomes a weapon and an excuse. A weapon to judge others, and an excuse to do whatever you want without holding yourself guilty. So that's why I have to go through this to make it very clear. The Enneagram is not a weapon and is not an excuse. The Enneagram is a tool for awakening. I'm sorry, I'm muting the people that are muted. So their function, the thinking brain, the most evolved, language, abstraction, putting strategies, making meaning, and creativity. The thinking brain, the emotional brain, emotions, memories, habits, values, compassion. Very briefly, of course. And the sensing brain, the fight, flight, and freeze mechanism, the immediate reactivity. This is the fastest of the three brains. It acts even before the other two brains realize that something is going on. Mobilization, action, preserving oneself, having courage and having a life force, having an identity, being on earth, being strong, being here, being alive. And again, every one of us has these three brains. No one lacks any of these three brains. Yet, because these three brains are all talking to us, and again, this is a metaphor. They are not distinct brains. They are one brain with three functions. But it's giving us three signals all the time. One of them, the signal is, am I safe and okay? Is everything around me fine or not? That's the sensing brain. One of them, is my connection and bonding with others fine or not? Do they see me well? Do they see me as I want to be? Do I have enough value here or not? And the third one, am I safe in the future? Do I know what I'm going to do? Can I live? Do I have the resources to go on in life or not? We have them all. But from very early, and actually, I might argue even before birth, we come into the world programmed to be led by one of these three. One of these becomes the boss. And once one of these becomes the boss, the other two become servants to it. Just work for its higher value. So if the sensing brain is the higher value, if being safe in my environment now and caring for my boundaries now is my higher value, these are the 8s, 9s, and 1s of the world. Type 8, type 9, type 1. If the emotional brain, and you realize I'm being very careful, some people call this the heart. And even when I'm just teaching the Enneagram, I might call it the heart. But because we're going to go into the spiritual side of the Enneagram, the heart is very different when we talk about the spirit. So I'm calling it very clearly, it's the emotional brain. It's just the brain. If I'm led by the emotional brain, it's all about bonding, connection with others, and image and value. And those are the 2s, 3s, and 4s of the world. And then what I care about is the future. if I'm always concerned about what is to come, and do I have enough resources, and there are different types of resources, to survive and be secure in the future, then those are the 5s, 6s, and 7s of the world. So 3 brains, 3 different strategies to deal with the world. Very briefly, because this is what gathers them, the sensing brain, the 8s, 9s, and 1s react to the present moment. They live in the now. They have to act immediately. Action has to be taken right now. They care about their personal space and they seek autonomy. Emotional brain reacts to relationships, mostly to the past and how I'm building my image, care about my image, and seek a sense of value. And the thinking brain reacts to the threats of the future, cares about the resources, and seeks strategies to guarantee survival. The thinking brain analyzes the past and the present to secure myself in the future, to create a strategy for the future. So it's as if one cares in the now, one thinks of the past and the value and image, and one thinks about the future. These are 3 totally different universes. Brains comes from a different world. And if you had the power to see the world from one of the other 2 universes other than the one you come from, you would be shocked at how different the world looks like. To make this closer to people, I give a metaphor. I call the people coming from the sensing brain, this is the universe, the world of the mountains. You know the people living in the mountains? The world of the mountains is usually harsh, rough, especially when you talk about the Middle Eastern mountains where we don't have all this greenery. It's rocks and desert and sand, and life is really harsh. These people are tough, reactive, sharp edges. Life is full of sharp edges. Life is not smooth. Life is not round. There's a lot of stubbornness. There's a lot of my way, because action is immediate. I cannot stop myself from reacting in the moment. So this is the world of the mountains. While the emotional brain is the world of the oceans. Emotions are like waves. They're not rigid like the mountain, rocks with sharp edges. They're very curvy. And they're very wavy. And they go up and down, up and down. In a moment, you're on top of the wave. And in the second moment, crash, you're all the way down. And the moods are shifting. And the image is shifting. And everything is flowing all the time. This is the emotions. While the thinking brain, I call it the world of the Eskimo, the cold desert. It's dry. It's not about action and it's not about emotions. It's about thinking. And thinking is slow. Thinking is dry. And thinking doesn't want to act immediately. Thinking doesn't see the now. Thinking is about acting later, moving late. What will I get later? What will I achieve later? It's Eskimo, it's dry. And a perfect world would be a harmony of all 3 together. Now, when you lead through the thinking brain, then usually you have problems with power and capability. If all that concerns you is resources, am I ready for the future or not? Then you're always worried. Do I have enough power to face the future? Do I have enough energy to face the future? Am I secure enough to face the future? So the head types, the 5s, 6s, and 7s are concerned about power. Once an event happens, the 5s, 6s, and 7s immediately shrink inside. You don't see that. It's not evident, but with any event, if you just hear a loud voice, something shrinks inside and they are like, what's happening? And do I have enough resources, power, capability to meet it? They are led by fear, which, if it overcomes them, it becomes anxiety. The image types, the emotional brain types on the other side are always looking around them. They care about the image. They care about the connection. They have problems knowing themselves. They have problems seeing themselves. So they have to see themselves in the eyes of those around them. Do you love me enough? Do you appreciate me enough? Do you admire me enough? Do you understand me enough? Do you see me enough? Do you connect to me enough? I can only know myself in your eyes. When I look inside, I get lost, or I might not find anything at all. And that's why they are led by a sense of lack of value. Now, the Enneagram books call it shame. And I don't think that's a very successful word. I had to put it just out of respect to the Enneagram books. But I like to call this shame. It actually means I'm not enough. It's a sense of me, just like this, without any extras, just this naked me, this naked Khaled as created. I'm not enough. I need to add something more. I need to be loved by the others to feel I'm enough. I need to be appreciated, admired, understood. Otherwise, I'm not enough. This is what they mean by shame. So this I am not enough creates two main affects: a sense of lack of value and a deep, deep sense of sadness. This sense of longing. Something is not there. Something is missing. And then the third group, since it's about my personal space, they have problems with boundaries. Where is my space and where is your space? So either my boundaries are too rigid and too tough and I take over your space, or they're too open, too porous, that I allow you into my space. We cannot set the boundaries correctly. And this lack of boundaries, this lack of finding the right distance between us so that I have my space that I'm safe inside, creates a sense of lack of control of the environment. I'm not in control of my life. I wish I had control. And lack of control immediately translates into anger. Look into your life in any moment you are angry in, and then just observe, why were you angry? It's a sense of, I need to control my immediate environment, and I am incapable of doing that. I don't have enough power to do that. Even if you're with a little kid and you tell them go to sleep and they don't go to sleep, what do? You start shouting at them, you start getting angry. Why? That's not going to work. It's just a sense of, I'm losing control over my environment now. While if you're afraid that they're not going to do good on an exam tomorrow, you don't get angry, you get anxious. You're going to do bad tomorrow because it's in the future. While if you're afraid they're going to do bad on the exam tomorrow, and then how will your sister look at you and your kids and look down at you because her kids are all very successful, then you feel a sense of shame. You're ashamed that your kids are not successful enough. This is image. So again, we have all of this. No human being was created missing any one of this. But one of these hijacks us. It takes over. It becomes the leading force. And these are the types. All the types are, and I'm not going to go into the types, by the way, because that's a whole huge thing, but just briefly to understand what the types are. This energy of anger can either be directed outside. I have anger and I will throw it on you. Once you direct the energy outside, it's you who is the reason of this anger that I have. It's you who are the reason that the environment is wrong, and I have to control you. That's the 8. Outside, energy outside. Or energy inside. I'm angry and I shouldn't be angry, and I have to control myself. I have to be right. I have to be correct. Because correcting myself, I become the model, and then I can correct others, and then the world can be perfect. That's the 1. Or always the middle type is the ambivalent type. It's like I'm angry, but I don't want to be angry. Or the 3, I'm shameful, but I don't want to be shameful. Or the 6, I am thinking and anxious, but I don't want to think and be anxious. So what do? They disconnect themselves. They escape sensing that affect inside them. So the 9 escapes the sense of anger because I want peace in my life. And if the anger comes out, I will cause problems. So I must not react to my anger. And 2, I don't have anger. Who knows that I have anger? Even I don't know that I have anger inside. But again, if you lose this anger, then you lose all of this. You lose the fight, flight, and freeze response. You lose the mobilization power. You lose the courage. You lose the life force. So what do you become? You fall into this fog of being lost, trying to create peace. The 2s, 3s, and 4s, the 2 directs the shame outside. So it's you who have a problem with image, not me. I have to take care of you. I have to serve you. But deep inside, it's if I don't earn your love, no one is going to be with me. So I actually try to create an indispensability. So I create a strong bond based on love. The 4 directs the shame inside. What's wrong with me? What's missing? What's deficient? I need to know everything about myself so I can find that deficient part in me so that I can heal it, so that I can become whole and complete again. While the 3 wants value and image through success and achievement and admiration. But if I feel my sense of shame, if my emotions overcome me, then they will stop me from achieving. So I have to forget that I even have emotions. So they empty the whole core. They become like an empty skeleton inside me. It's like an empty statue. They become doers, active to achieve image and achieve value and try to escape their inner emotions, just like the 9 escape their anger. And then the 5s, 6s, and 7s. The 5s direct the anxiety inside. What's going on? This is too much. I'm not ready to live this life. I need to understand what's happening around me. This is too much for me. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. This is the resource that the 5 is lacking. There is not enough of me to live this life. There's not enough of me. I cannot give this world any part of myself. Let me sit outside and observe and watch and understand. And when I figure it out, I'll come and live with you guys. The 7 directs the anxiety outside. I want space, I want freedom, I want options. I want to know that in the future I'll be able to do whatever I want and get all the freedom and the experiences and the joy that I need to get to feel that I can survive well in the future. So they fall into a mode of planning for the future, never realizing the present around them now, never living in the moment. Because the problem is outside and I have to get from the world all the resources that guarantee my freedom and my joy and my expansion into the world. While the 6 understands that their thoughts about security and safety are the cause of the huge anxiety they're in. So they become ambivalent, meaning untrusting to their thoughts so that they can calm down the anxiety. Again, these are all very inefficient strategies. They cause our suffering in life. So by doing that, they lose the compass that guides them. It's as if the 6s, because this is the guidance, this is the compass in life, this is what creates strategies. So if I don't trust this anymore, I don't know which direction to take. All the roads look the same. I fall into a huge sense of doubt, and I need someone to trust so that they can give me guidance into the future. But even when I find the person or the institute or the organization or the power or the money that I can trust to secure me in the future, I still doubt that. So I trust you, but I doubt you. And this is the ambivalence that happens when I don't trust my thoughts. So these are actually the 9 types. And again, this is just touching the surface, but you have to see it from inside. The Enneagram world, because it came from the old mystic world, uses some very old terminology. What I just mentioned, they call them the fixations and the passions. So each type is fixated on a certain thought and is burning with an emotion that they cannot stop being led by. Now, these passions are actually found in all the old spiritual schools from the days of the ancient Egyptians, the pharaohs, and the temples that they had. And Russ Hudson, one of the great Enneagram teachers, comes every year and makes a retreat around the old Egyptian monasteries and artifacts and the ancient Egyptian tomes and places to show the origins of these passions. These are, in the Christian tradition, what are called the deadly sins. So the 7 deadly sins are actually 7 plus 2, and these are the 9 passions of the Enneagram. These are what the Muslim Sufis call the diseases of the heart, or the covers of the heart. It's as if they are the darkness that covers the light within our hearts. These are what the Chinese used to call the inner demons, the inner ghosts. If you read in the Buddhist tradition, you will find that the Buddha, when he was sitting in front of the tree before his awakening, all kinds of demons came up to him, trying to seduce him. These are these same passions. So the passion of the 8 is lust, and lust means too much energy. Too much. I put too much anger into the world. The passion of the 9 is sloth, forgetfulness. What am I doing here? Who am I? The passion of the 1 is resentment, wrath, inner anger, explosive anger. The passion of the 2 is pride, holier than thou. I don't need anything from you guys, you all need from me. The passion of the 3 is vanity. Of course, Devil's Advocate is a marvelous movie to realize the passion of the 3, with the great sentence that Al Pacino ends the movie with, vanity, my favorite sin. And then the passion of the 4 is envy. And I define envy as, why me? Why me? Why do I have this deficiency? Why am I not like everyone else? So there's continuous comparison. The passion of the 5 is avarice. There's not enough, so I have to hold on. It's not greed. Some people say greed. No, it's not greed, it's avarice. It's holding on. I don't want to let anything out, because if I let something out, I will not have enough after that. The passion of the 6 is doubt. Anxiety that creates doubt. Angst, they call it. Angst, the German angst might be the best word, better than the words in English. And finally, the passion of the 7 is gluttony. Never enough from outside. Now, if you don't understand the passions, you don't understand Enneagram. Enneagram becomes boxes that we judge each other with. The passion never leaves us. We come into the world with it, and we leave the world with it. And actually, the passion is the gift. These are the paradoxes of the Enneagram. The Enneagram and the spiritual journey are pure paradoxes. These passions are the source of suffering in our life, yet they are the gift upon which we build our personality and our healthy ego, and we become something in this world. Without this lust, the 8s would not become the leaders and the bosses and the powerful people of the world. Without this sloth, the 9s would not become the peacemakers and the love makers and the ones who teach us acceptance and being, to not eventually become the righteous people, the voice of morals, the voice of discernment, of practical wisdom. Without this pride, the 2s would not become the nurturers of the world, the givers of the world. Without this vanity, the 3s wouldn't become the doers, the golden finger people of the world. They have a golden finger. They touch anything, it turns into gold. The 3s, they just add value and meaning to everything. The 4s becomes the artist, become the heart, the emotion, the source of beauty, the source of wonder, the source of fantasy, the source of romance in the world. The 5s, this avarice, creates the wise people with science, with knowledge, with vision, with clarity, with transparency. The 6, this trust and loyalty and doubt, this whole mechanism makes them the loyal people, the people that create the glue, that get us together, that hold the structure of society together, creates societies, creates families, creates groups. And the 7s bring us freedom, breaking our chains, living life, enjoying life, savoring life, having a wonderful life. So never look at these passions as something bad. They are there for a reason, because we are here on this earth for a reason. We are part of this great, huge, humongous, unimaginable system. We're not separate. We're not individual. None of us created ourselves. None of us decided when we're going to come, which country we're going to be born in, who's going to be our parents, how we're going to live, when we're going to die. We don't have control over all of this. We are here for a reason, and we are given the tools to act out the message we're on earth to do. We're all messengers of this divine power, of this source, of this oneness. And it is this passion that pushes us to do our message. But then as we evolve, as we mature, as we grow, if we move on a journey of awareness and consciousness and growth, we start to realize that we are actually driven. We are actually pushed, controlled like puppets by these passions. And then we start to observe, we start to see, we start to be aware, we start to be mindful of. And once you start just observing, making these passions object, as Ken Wilber would say, making the subject object. Once you start observing your passions, you start going above your passions. You start being the controller of your passions. The passions never go away. You will never lose your gut, your emotional brain, your thinking brain. They will always be giving you the messages that they are giving. You'll just not be driven by them anymore. You will be the driver. And this is when your consciousness evolves beyond this. But by that time, you will have all the skills you need to succeed in your message. The righteous one, once they become overpowering their wrath inside, they don't lose their righteousness, but they become reasonable in their righteousness. They become moral in their righteousness. And this is when what the Enneagram calls the holy ideas and virtues come up. You start seeing the world with your thinking brain, connecting to the world with your emotional brain from a totally different level. Instead of having pride because you need to be loved like the two, you start having humility because you know that all the love in the world is there. There is a holy will. There is a holy freedom to be who we are and to approve of our needs. Instead of having gluttony like the 5 because there's not enough, you start realizing there is enough. There is a lot. There's this omniscient, omnipotent power in the world. By the way, you don't have to be a believer in anything. You just need to see that there is a magnificent system way beyond this limited self. And you just surrender to that system. And this is when the non-attachment virtue of the 5 comes in. They just let go of what they're holding on to. And they see the wisdom in the world. Instead of this lust and need for power of the 8, they start having the virtue of innocence. They become like a little child. They know that they are protected by this divine power, by this great system. And this is when they become innocent. They become like little children. And they can be who they really are in the world without fear because they see now the holy strength. And these holy words, by the way, are not spiritual words. These are actually wise words. These are just looking into the universe and saying, wow, why was I limiting myself so much? You don't need to believe in a God or a divine or anything to access these holy ideas and virtues. Yet to go beyond this level, you do need to believe in a divine. And believe here is not the old blue mentality of believe, meaning worship, and yes, I know I want to go to heaven. No, 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 it's not like that at all. It's allowing the spiritual heart to connect to the world, not lead through the 3 brains. Realize that there's something much greater than these 3 brains, and that we as humans have access to it. This is the world of the mystics. So now I'll move, and this is where the essential qualities and beyond come over. And I'll talk about the essential qualities in a minute. So again, this is the place of the 3 centers on the Enneagram, the 8s, the 9s, and the 1s. And these are the main powers controlling them. And for each of these 3 brains, we can either be ego identified or closer and closer to what the mystics call essence. You don't have to get there, just at least free of your ego control. And the 3rd brain, and that's a whole big issue by itself, is where the instincts come in, the gut. And it's clear from the time we're not going to touch the instincts today, because I want to go through the emotional brain and the head brain and how they evolve. And this is where the spiral and the states of consciousness come in. And I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware of this chart from Wilber, the Wilber-Combs lattice. And the Wilber-Combs lattice actually talks about the spiral, but in the colors that Wilber has created in his integral model, and the states of consciousness. So I will modify on this just for our teaching here, and I would say the Wilber-Combs lattice, but modified by myself very clearly, so that I would put, because I'm more comfortable in talking in the spiral dynamics colors. So the thinking brain evolves through these. This is our cognitive complexity. Sorry, the brain evolves through these. The thinking, the emotional, and the gut, especially the thinking and the emotion. They evolve through these levels, the thinking and the emotional brain. Purple, red, blue, orange, green, yellow, turquoise. This is an increased sense of capacity that's always happening. Here, I'll go back, I'm sorry, to this slide. As we grow, there is an increasing capacity. A capacity of the head brain to see the world and think of the world in a wider, more encompassing shape. An emotional brain that holds the world with love and compassion greater and greater and greater. And even a gut brain that acts in the world with more righteousness and more justice and more morality and more peace and more acceptance. So this capacity is important. And if all of you know the great saying by Tesla, Nikola Tesla, when he says, if you want to know the world, think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibrations. Well, I have a little modification on that. I say, if you want to understand the human conscious journey, frequency, but frequency, it's all about capacity. Is your cognitive brain capacity enough or not? And is your spiritual heart capacity enough or not? So this is increased capacity in the brains, and this is increased capacity in the spiritual heart. Now, I'm going to go through both of them very briefly in like 10 minutes to allow for the questions. And I will start with the cognitive brain because that was covered in our journey with Martin. And of course, what I did in my work over the last years is connect the Enneagram types with this lattice. So it's like as if I gave a third dimension. And the third dimension would be the 9 Enneagram types. Now, I want you to imagine it. I haven't drawn it yet, unfortunately. It's too complex for me yet to do it on PowerPoint, so I need someone with a good CAD program to do it for me. But it's as if I add a third dimension with the 9 types. So you have now each type with its movement along the spiral and with its spiritual evolution. Now, since that's way, way too big for this session, I actually cover that in, this whole journey together takes like 2 years. I will just briefly cover one type. And in preparing this session, I thought, which type should I cover briefly? And I don't know, I felt like covering type 2. My father, who died in January, he was a beloved type 2. And type 2, as I said, is the source of bond and connection and love. And preparing this session, I just felt I need his energy with me in it, and I dedicated to him. So I will cover type 2 on both the spiral and the spiritual dimension. So it's as if now we're going to look at type 2 here. And let's start with the spiral. So how does type 2 evolve along the spiral? This slide is just a cover, and then I'll take each one of them briefly. So these are just like titles, but let's see what they mean and then come back again to this slide. Beige. Beige, type 2 is actually the primate mother instinct. This is the mothering instinct. Now, of course, it's not easy to find pictures to depict the type. So please, I don't mean anything humiliating for the 2 when I put this chimp, but I didn't find an early mother Homo sapien picture. I felt this one really shows this mothering instinct of the primates. And this is where the type 2 evolved from. The parenting instinct, the emotional belonging to the offspring, actually, not to the species, just to the whole offspring. The need to be needed in order to have a place. My place comes. Remember, this is an emotional type. It's an image type. I see myself in what I serve the group with, and I serve the group with my mothering and loving instinct that I give. Now, as humans evolve, and the purple comes in, and this would actually between this picture, between the beige and the purple, the tribes come in, and the 2 becomes the social bonder. That power of love that bonds the tribe together, caring for the tribe's members, affiliation to the tribe, taking care of them, building relations of trust among the members, building bonds through reciprocity of care, connecting beyond the direct relatives to the whole group, and even may sacrifice themselves for the good of the group. So this is where the beginnings of altruism appear, but it's still very early to have true altruism. They move on to evolve to the red. And the red to, remember, type 2, with all its love and care, is a very controlling type. It's about will. That's why when they evolve, it's the holy will. So again, it's the mother in all its different shapes. And the red is the godmother. Now, what's the difference between the godmother and the godfather? The godfather is the boss, the leader, the one in front that controls everything. While the godmother is the one that holds the strings and controls the godfather. She's actually the one in control, but from behind the godfather. And this is where the 2 becomes. They become the power behind the power, and they control through indispensability. They control by becoming power brokers. It's as if things have to pass through them. They can become the ones who keep their freedom, sometimes by selling their bodies, by selling themselves, just to gain their freedom. Now, this is very paradoxical from where we're thinking right now. It's very tough, but think of the slums of the big cities of the world. You might be able to imagine the slums of South Africa because they've been in the movies a lot. If you've seen Tsotsi, Tsotsi is a very, very tough movie. It's a very 8 movie, but there's the 2 in it. Where is this guy, these women that facilitate things going around to have their freedom. I can give you my body, but I maintain my freedom. That's if I don't have the power. If I have the power, I'm behind the powerful person. Paradoxical freedom. I'll keep my freedom by selling my body, but I choose who to have sex with. That when it comes to sex, and then you can put it with money, with everything else. And men, I become the second in command. So that the leader, I become indispensable to the leader, but I do that by giving and by helping all the time. Again, like the picture is very nice here, the godmother, controlling the strings from behind. Now, what happens when the 2 enters blue? This is the typical, or let's say the stereotypical Middle Eastern mother, I would say. And this has many names. I chose Middle Eastern, although that word doesn't exist. It's the typical Jewish mother, the typical Egyptian mother, the typical Italian mother. And actually the pictures, I put it from that. If you Google a typical Jewish mother, this is it, a typical Italian mother, a typical Middle Eastern, Muslim or Egyptian mother. These are the typical stereotypical mothers from our lives. My mother, maybe the mother of most of the people here, and Natasha's mother, and I'm sure the mother of many people here. And for those whose mothers were already orange and green, you've heard about these mothers, I'm sure. The mothers of the 50s in the United States. So dedicate life to service and sacrifice. The circle of service is defined by those I care about. I give my life to my kids, my husband, my parents. They see themselves as giving up their dreams and their world for the system and the higher order, always feeling they don't get back in return as much as they give, use guilt and emotional manipulation to manipulate others and even to manipulate themselves to go on. Now, again, realize that this description is generic. Inside each one of these levels, purple, red, blue, there is another dimension. Remember this chart. I'll go back again. It's very, very important to always remember this, that these are cognitive development levels. They are not spiritual maturity and awakening. So inside each one of these, the beige, every one of these that we've gone through, you could be mature and healthy, or you could be unhealthy and immature. A mature, healthy mother is a mother that really loves and doesn't feel anymore that she's lost anything and lacked anything, while an immature one is always complaining that she's done everything for you and you don't love her enough and you're not there for her enough, and they start manipulating with this guilt. There's a beautiful ad about a Christmas dinner. It's a German ad. I think, what's the name of this series of supermarkets? Edeka or something. I don't remember the word. Just Google Christmas dinner ad German. It's a 2-minute ad about this old father who's calling his kids every Christmas to come to spend Christmas with him. And they don't come. They're busy. There's a doctor, there's a nurse, there's this, there's a professional. And eventually, they all get texts that your father has died. So they're all mourning after you see the father 3-4 Christmases alone. And then we understand he died, and they're all crying and sobbing and going to the house. And they see the father preparing the Christmas dinner. It's a very emotional ad. And the father tells them, how could I get you all together? Now, with all the emotions, I cannot see that ad without having tears. Especially I remember my father always when I see it, because this is how he lived. But all this, yet if you want to look objectively, this is huge emotional manipulation, huge guilt, huge control. He made them leave everything and run and feel their father has died and they're in tears just to see that he's waiting for them. He wants them around him. So this is this emotional control and manipulation in the blue of the two. Which again, we all move from maturity to immaturity. None of us is mature. Don't think I am mature and I'm not immature. No. We're waving up and down the scale all the time in our life. It's just how aware and awake we are when these things happen. And then the orange, this Middle Eastern mother starts having ambitions of her own. But remember, the two doesn't want to be in control. So they become the power behind the throne. And we know many ladies like this. And I gave you just 3 examples that you might know well. Nancy Reagan, Barbara Bush, and the beloved Dolly Parton. I love Dolly Parton, by the way. And these are 3 very clear orange twos. They dedicate life to service and sacrifice for their group. And if they're a sexual or a one-to-one instinct, to that person they are living with, they are connected with, so that they would succeed, and they are the power behind the throne. Circle of service defined by those I care about. Again, they see themselves, oh no, the words here are wrong, I'm sorry. These are the words from the blue. But you can get it from the images. So I'm sorry, I'll send the correct slide. These are the definitions of the blue, not the orange, these words here. But the orange here, she wants the partner or the group or whoever he or she is loving to succeed, and they are the power behind that success. The largest number of presidents of the US were type 9s, because the US political scene is very, very complex, and it needs someone with this acceptance and wit to be able to maneuver and go through all this complex web of politics. And the nines are best at this. So the statistics show that type 9s are the most US presidents, while the most first ladies were types 2, because they support the person to become that powerful leader, and we are beside you, covering you up. And again, this applies men and women, so not with the president, of course, and first lady, but I mean, in general, they become the one that helps everyone around them succeed, but now they have ambitions. So they put their ambitions in those around them so that their image also becomes bright. And now we move to the green. We move beyond this ambitious drive into the harmony. And the green becomes the custodian of the earth and everything in it. They serve Mother Earth. They are the father, the mother that serves Earth and all the humans. They sympathize and give self away to take care of the needs of those on Earth. Without that strive that existed, they have a big enough heart to give what they perceive the world needs. But remember, even the green is still a deficiency level. So it's still giving what they think the others give, what they think the world needs. And sacrifices, self is exhausting. So the twos, this is a very dangerous place for the twos. The green is a very dangerous place because they can give and actually exhaust themselves and get themselves so thin that they are like burning themselves out and they cannot stop it. They cannot help it. They can fall, they can suddenly run out of resources. Twos have a fixation of self-abundance, false abundance, as if they can give forever, but they can suddenly be used. They are highly abused and misused by those around them in the green level. They may give too much and not have much left for themselves, but empathy turns fully on in green for all the types. So if they haven't mastered their feelings by now, they are abused and misused by others, as I said, but they will still attend to others, yet be aggressive if misused. Again, very briefly here. Now, finding pictures for the yellow and turquoise was very tough. So this is as good as I could get. Yellow, I call the authentic altruist. Until the green is levels of deficiency. But from the yellow, we are dealing with the world from a sense of sufficiency. And since I am sufficient now, I really see you. I really see the world. I really see others. And now I can actually be truly authentic. I can actually be altruistic. I can recognize my needs at last. I can recognize your needs. I can recognize the needs of the system, and I can serve the system. And since it's now a sufficiency level, not a deficiency level, then this altruism replaces the conditional giving. Discover the importance of integrating rationality with the feelings. From yellow, the brains start to align. From yellow, we start to harmonize the three brains. We start to give the three brains space. We're not just directed by one brain. And that's why rationality starts kicking in for the two from the yellow. And finally, of course, the turquoise, which is the hardest to describe always. And I call the two here true humility. This is the true humility, not just altruism. They recognize their humbleness. The pride decreases a lot. They tend to themselves without feeling guilty about it or ashamed about it. They feel they are part of a greater whole and that they are nurtured by this greater whole. So they are just a channel of giving and love. They don't need to create love. They are love. They are full of love. They are connected to everything in the universe. They don't need to create connection. They are needed because they are created for a reason. So they don't need to create indispensability. And they can surrender to the natural flow. This is what the Enneagram calls holy freedom and holy will, and the will of the divine flow. and totally ease the need of indispensability and finding true value because they find it in themselves and they love themselves. So that would be the journey of the two up the spiral. Now, I want to give you, and I'm sorry, I'm sure you're all exhausted and I've been talking for so long, but do you allow me to give you a flavor from the spiritual growth? Can you give me some thumbs up or down? Okay, so I'm really sorry. I expected this to take time, but I'm going as fast as I really can. So let's take a look at the states of consciousness. States of consciousness as defined by Evelyn Underhill in her book Mysticism, and as defined by the Buddhists, and in different words in Christian mysticism and in Islamic mysticism and Sufism, you find that there are different layers of reality. Now, you can only encompass the layers which you have realized. Beyond that, our human mind makes us believe as if they are, I call it, boxes. That's why, for example, if you take the monotheistic religions' description of heaven and hell, from the gross and the subtle, we always imagine, and we're taught by all our religious leaders, we imagine this heaven and hell as if there is this place, I call it this box, where you are taken out of this box and you are going and you're put into that other box, which is called hell, or another box that's called heaven. Why is this? Because beyond the identification that we have with our spiritual level, we cannot imagine. So I like to draw actually, they're not different worlds. They are worlds that are expanding. Remember the expansion of the heart, but the spiritual heart, not the emotional brain. So it's an expanding circle. If we draw a line here between the subtle and the gross, we would have the lowest level of gross. This is pure matter. This is what we study through physics and natural sciences. And then out of that came the layer of life, the first living cell. And life is studied by biology, which encompasses the molecules and the atoms and the subatomic atoms that are studied by physics and natural sciences. Transcend and include, but now from a collective, let's say, frequency level. And then comes the primate prefrontal cortex, neocortex, from which the mind came, which connected us to a new layer of reality. And in it came what we call the mind. And the mind lies as a connection between the world of the gross and the world of the subtle. Now, the subtle is still within time and space. The gross is controlled by time and space. And time and space only become evident through the mind by realizing a subtle level. But this subtle level, we're just entering it through psychology and neurobiology. And I would say neurobiology, more the mind looking downwards, and psychology, the mind looking upwards. And upwards, we enter the subtle realm of what we call the soul, which is studied through philosophy, through theology, through transpersonal psychology, through awakening experiences. We start realizing a level. And this is what I call the level of wisdom. The human brain at the level of subtle becomes free of the gross values and the gross requirements. And we'll talk about the values of each in a moment. And when you're free of that, you become above the gross and you can observe the gross. The gross becomes an object, not a subject you're seeing through. And this is where wisdom comes. And most of the great realizations through human history have come from this subtle level. in physics, relativity, laws of motion, in philosophy, Socrates, Aristotle, in art, in music, in, I mean, Michelangelo was definitely doing his great paintings and his great sculptures from here. When he talks about the statue of David, they ask him and he says, I saw him in the marble and I just freed him. This is a subtle expression. It's not a gross expression. It's not, I'll do this to have a very nice statue, to have money and fame. He's doing it from a higher level. It's a wise level. So this is the brain, regardless of which of the three brains. Again, brain doesn't mean thinking brain. So the emotional brain becomes wise. The thinking brain becomes wise, and the gut brain becomes wise at this level of subtle. Most of the psychological findings of the 20th century came from here. Maslow was acting from here, and then he moved beyond. Jung, of course, moved beyond. Freud was from here. Adler was from here. Most of these great things that change the world come from this level. But then we have the capacity to move beyond that. And we enter the causal realm. Now, the causal realm is beyond time and space. This is a different level. It's a different layer. You now can see archetypes. This is from where Jung was talking when he talked about the archetypes and the collective consciousness. All this is beyond time and space. It's something that always existed, or that it will always exist. It's, as they say, if you take, I love this sentence from Wilber, if you take eternity to mean no time and space, then eternity is for those who live in the now. Because in the moment of the now, you are beyond time and space. You access the causal. This is the place of mysticism. This is where the mystics start saying stuff that we don't understand. What are they talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean we're all connected? We're all one. What do you mean we're channeling from a storehouse that is endless? What are these Indian Akashic records? What is this collective consciousness Jung is talking about? What are these mythologies and archetypes? Where do they come from? How come all these hero's journey is identical in all the different cultures? How come? It's because they all access this level of mysticism, this level of spirit, this level of archetypes. But then there's even beyond that. These archetypes themselves, for us to imagine, again, remember now, we're trying to imagine with our minds something that is greater than our minds. So we can only talk in metaphors. And it's incredible how when you access this level, you realize that every single enlightened person in history was pointing to the exact same thing. They were just using different metaphors. When the Muslims talk about the Mohammedan light, and the Christians talk about the Christ consciousness, and the Buddhists talk about the Buddha nature, and the Taoists talk about the Tao, and Jung talks about the collective consciousness, they're all pointing to the same thing. They're pointing to this layer beyond time and space, where we're all one, where we're just a ray. Even a ray of light is not a right metaphor. It's just something much deeper than all of this. You can only reach it through accessing it, through sensing it, through touching it, through being it. But then beyond that, the layers of these archetypes become simpler, more prime archetypes. And these prime archetypes are the higher meanings. These are the great experiential senses. These are what the Sufis call the divine, beautiful names of Allah. These divine, beautiful names, this is what the Buddhists call the higher causal, the archetypal causal. These are so simple, they're not complex. You can have in the causal realm the archetype of a mother. But the archetype of the mother is made up of so many meanings. But then in this higher witness, it's pure meanings. The meaning of love, the meaning of care, the meaning of strength, the meaning of wisdom, the meaning, it's this beyond archetypal, prime meaning. And this is the same and one with the oneness and unity of the source of all being. And this is where the philosophers have always got lost, is the source, the one, God, Allah, the Tao, this great supreme. Is it one or is it numerous? Now, from the level of philosophy, you cannot understand it. Even from the level of mysticism, you can get stuck in the words. You have to really just get there and experience the mystery. The Sufis call this the concealed world. It is concealed. It is a pure mystery beyond anything we can access in our lifetimes. We can just get closer and closer and closer, and we get these meanings, we get these signs from the mystics and the enlightened beings that have been on this earth time after time after time. We just look at them. Now, the incredible thing that I realized when I started studying the Enneagram is that even these enlightened beings all had Enneagram types. But their Enneagram types were from this level of higher meaning, from this level of experiencing this concealed reality as much as their capacity allowed. No one can encompass it totally. The Muslims have a saying, Allahu Akbar. They translate it into English, God is great. But it actually, the correct literal translation is God is greater. Why this God is greater? Because whatever you imagine, whatever you think, whatever you reach, this concealed mystery is even greater. So why are you guys fighting with each other over who's right? None of you knows anything. None of you knows the truth. You can only experience parts of the truth by getting closer and closer to this concealed reality. Now, I created a model out of this to build upon the Enneagram. And I used as a foundation, just like I used the spiral dynamics as a foundation for looking at the Enneagram types through the cognitive complexity. And I created my model, I call it the stages of the mind. That was the vertical dimension. So I build upon the spiral, but I add some more additions. Here I built upon what the Sufis call the levels of the self. And I have found these same levels with the Buddhists, with the Taoists, with the Christian mysticism, with the Jewish Kabbalah, with the modern psychology, to as much as it could go. They have all found these levels of the self. But I call my model stages of the heart. So I'm not looking at the whole self, I'm looking at the capacity of the heart through the Enneagram types. So the Enneagram, as we saw, talks about the fixations, passions, and instincts. And these are the realm of the gross. And then when we enter the subtle, we enter into this realm of holy ideas and virtues. And as I told you, the holy ideas and virtues in the subtle do not require a belief in a God or a higher being or a higher existence. They don't require it. Many of the people that were here didn't even believe in a God or an afterlife or a consciousness that goes beyond our physical existence. But they are free from the gross identification. The values are now values of wisdom. Yet this line here between the subtle and the causal, you can only pass through opening your heart, your spiritual heart, to the mystery. And this is a big challenge, because it's the mind, it's the brain that brought us all the way up to here. And it is the brain now, it is the mind, sorry, it is the mind now that needs to reach the conclusion that this is the end of my journey. I now have to give the reign, the leadership, to something much greater than myself. I like to give a metaphor here of, if you want to go, let's say in the old times, in the deserts, in the old times of the palaces, you want to go to the palace of the king. You're in the wilderness, you're lost, and you want to reach the palace of the king. You need a horse, you need a camel, you need something to ride to take you to the gate of the king. It brings you out of the loss, out of the wilderness, out of the gross world, into to stand in front of the gate. But can you enter upon the king riding your horse or riding your mount? We even say it. What would happen if you enter to the king riding your mount? They will chop off your head. And this is the mystical metaphor for chopping off this thinking mind. We do not enter the king's palace with our heads. You have to humbly bow, and bowing, prostrating, taking your head down is the mystical symbol of bringing this brain down to the earth and entering with your spiritual heart. Pass this line with your brain or your mind. Your mind has to surrender to the spiritual heart to access this causal. If you have not seen Carl Jung's very small video, it's less than a minute. Carl Jung, at the end of his life, he is asked by a journalist. He's asking him, do you believe in God? So Carl Jung smiles and says something, I don't remember the exact words, something like, it's very complex, something like this. So he asks him again, do you believe in God? And then the way, you just have to feel the energy of Jung's answer. He tells him, I don't have to believe. I know. I know. I don't have to believe. This is this knowing of entering this causal level. Believe is the work of the mind, the work of the gross, the work of the subtle. The gross and the subtle need to believe because they use the mind. But the causal doesn't believe. It's experiential. It knows. So that's why you cannot enter with the mind. You need to know. And beyond that, we have the witness, the higher causal, which becomes the divine names, the causal archetypes, and then the non-dual, the pure essence. Now, time is running, so I'll go very fast. The next part, the 7 levels of the self according to the Sufis, and now I am mapping. Now I'm doing this is my work of mapping. So this is not the Sufis. I mean, I don't want to be messing up and then people accusing the Sufis. This is my, what do we say? My fantasies. So they have the commanding self, the blaming self, the inspired self, the serene self, the content self, the gratified self, and the complete self. These are the 7 levels of the self. If you know the Christian mystics book, The Cloud of Unknowing, beautiful contemplation book. It's called The Cloud of Unknowing, anonymous writer, a pure mystic. And he talks about 4 levels of the mystic. And they exactly fall onto the general. This is the level of the seeker, the inspired, seeking. And then the special, that is the serene. And then he talks about the singular, and that is the content and gratified. And then he talks about the complete. And this is what also the Sufis call complete. And the Sufis talk about the complete man, and they refer to Muhammad as complete man. The Christians talk about the complete, and they refer to Jesus as the complete. So again, it's all these enlightened beings that are the complete. The Buddha, these are the complete up here. They're beyond our grasping. Now, these are the selves. I will not describe them much, but you will understand them from me describing the 7 levels of the heart. I call the first one the unavailable heart. This unavailable heart is a heart of utter fixation. There's no presence. It's pure reactivity. And this heart lives in a sense of shame, of fear, of grief, of as if nothing is ever nice, nothing is ever right, nothing is ever correct, nothing is ever enough. I had some slides here. Yeah. Regret, guilt, humiliation, numbness, helplessness, despair, tragedy, grief, hopelessness, a sense that God is punishing, that the world is evil, nothing good can come from the world, and they are unavailable. And this level needs therapy. This is the level of depression. And then comes the level of the striving heart. This is the heart that never has enough. The 8 never has enough power. The 9 never has enough peace. The 1 never has enough perfection. The 2 never has enough need, this indispensability. The 3 never has enough success. The 4 never has enough image and being seen and understood. The 5 never has enough knowledge. The 6 never has enough loyalty and trust and safety. The 7 never has enough freedom and experiences and properties and whatever they get from the world. So it's always striving and never enough. And this is where the fixations and passions are very evident of the Enneagram. So the striving level is really where the fixations and passions are described. The unavailability, you wouldn't look in the passions and the fixations. You would go look for it in the DSM manual, the manual of psychological disorders. So instead of striving to be knowledgeable and independent, the 5, in the unavailability, the 5 becomes schizoid. Instead of striving for perfection, the 1, in the unavailability, the OCD takes over. So these are the DSM manual identifications, while the striving is the place where we describe the fixations and passions in the books of the Enneagram. And these are my findings, so you won't, this is not exactly what the Enneagram people say. But then comes the level where you discover the mind, you discover psychology and neurobiology, you discover that there is something beyond the gross living, and you start connecting between the gross and the subtle, and you become empowered to change. I call this level the level of the true student. Student here is a student of life, a student of inner work, a student of spirituality or of cognitive. I want to know more. The value here is greater wisdom, but I haven't found it yet. It's no longer the gross values. Down here, there is no hope, but in the striving, the value comes from the passion and the fixation, and it's always something gross. While the value in empowerment comes from the path I want to go on, but I am in between worlds. If I can fully enter the subtle world and I become relaxed, serene, there is no deficiency, this is the area of wisdom and illumination. This is the area where I start having transparency and clarity and reason and objectivity, and I start to manifest higher meanings. There is balance, there is stability, there is wellness in this level. Most of the great, as I told you, scientists and artists of the world came from this level. I would assume, again, this is my assumption, my work, my research. And then once they drop the mind and they start discovering, again, this is on the line, I'm in between. I still cannot totally surrender my mind, but I know that there's something beyond. There's always a moving layer. I start feeling the divine light, the divine love, the divine energy coming to me. This is the level, I call it, of the mystic lover. Read for Rumi. All his love poems of loving the divine. Read for Teresa of Avila. Read for any mystic around the world in this level of love, and they talk about the beloved and how they are drunk with the love of the beloved. The point here is I am standing at the door of the beloved. I feel the light coming behind the door and I am knocking. But the door does not open. Rumi has a beautiful poem. It's a very short poem, but it's beautiful. I will recite it from my mind very briefly because it is exactly this level and how to move to the next one. The lover stood at the door of the beloved knocking, and the beloved called from inside, "Who is it?" And the lover said, "It is I." And the beloved said, "Go away. There is no place here for you and I." So the lover was crushed. He went into the wilderness. This is what they call the dark night of the soul. This is John of the Cross's dark night of the soul. So the lover went into the wilderness for years in tears, wanting the beloved, but cannot reach the beloved. Until one day he went back again to the door of the beloved and he knocked. And the beloved called from inside, "Who is it?" And the lover said, "There is only you." And it is at that moment that the door opened wide. Because to enter to the beloved, you have to surrender the I. There is no I. There is only you. There is only one. There is only the beloved. And this is when you move to the gratified and realize the difference. In the content, there is an I. I am content. But in the gratified, the Arabic verb is very clear. You are being gratified by the other. It's not your doing. It is the light being put into your heart. It's not you doing the loving. The beloved takes you in their arms. So this is the gratified, and I call it the level of synchronicity. At this level, there is utter joy. And when people usually enter this level, when they first enter and the capacity is still tight, they fall into a state of ecstasy. And this ecstasy is ununderstood by the people around them. And so many mystics have uttered incomprehensible words in this state of ecstasy, and they have lost their lives because of it. Or they have been given psychological drugs because of it. Because people don't understand. Are you crazy? Yes, I am crazy in love. I am crazy in joy. I am dancing with life. I'm dancing with the universe. And it takes a while to settle down. And some people never settle down. So this is utter, pure happiness and love and joy with the one, beyond which there is this ineffable realization, something we cannot define, the mystery. So again, taking type 2, what would type 2 look like upon this journey? This is my last part, I promise. My last part. So what would it look like? What does type 2 look like when they are unavailable? Histrionic, possessive, delusional sense of entitlement, always feeling they're a victim, sense of worthlessness, and they are always mourning the past, mourning their life. They're in grief. No one loves me, no one cares about me, no one wants me. I am worthless. When they move up to the striving heart, it is a heart of, again, the passions and the fixations, pride, flattery, false abundance, always giving unsolicited advice to create a value and meaning for themselves. They deceive themselves before deceiving others. They seek desirability and they seek indispensability. They strive for it, but they never get it. Then the level of empowerment. They become pleased with themselves. They start feeling a bit of value, but this value is a bit deceptive. So they start feeling they are saints, an inner sense of being saints. I'm the good one. I'm the loving one. Look what I've done for everyone. I am worthy. And I need to find what's behind it. They have higher concern for others. They start seeing others because it's not totally deficiency. And this is the stereotypical mother. But then when this mother or father becomes serene and the heart becomes wise, they access the holy ideas and virtues, humility. They see the divine will and freedom, the system, have a good sense of themselves. Now they know themselves. They can access their own needs. They relinquish their need for appreciation because they now have the wisdom to appreciate themselves. They can see others for who they truly are. They become genuinely loving, genuinely caring, genuinely nurturing. But now they can access the divine love, the effusion. And since they are love, they become the channel of this between God, the one, the source, the heavens and earth, the love between us, the connection between all life and all humanity. Empathy takes over, emotional bonding, altruism, balanced in giving, generous hearts, full of goodness, full of humbleness, graciousness, compassion. They become the true meaning of grace. Here is where we see what the Christians call grace, what the Muslims, the Sufis call barakah. Barakah, grace, blessings. And beyond that, is there beyond that? Yes, there is. They now start channeling the divine names, the higher archetypes. Now, in respect of the Sufi divine names, I wrote them in Arabic, but I will read them for you. Al-Wahhab, the all-giver, that their treasures never are empty. Al-Wadud, the all-loving and always checking on the world and asking about his loved ones, never leaving his loved ones alone. Al-Wali, the one who governs the acts of the lives of all his loved ones. This is now channeling these pure, simple, divine names. This is not the stereotypical mother like in the yellow level down here in the empowerment. These colors don't mean anything, by the way. I just wanted to differentiate them. So don't connect these to the spiral in any way. I just needed to use some colors. So this is not the stereotypical mother found in the empowerment. This is the archetypal mother. This is where all the mothers of the world bring their love to their children from. The holy saying in Islam on the tongue of the Prophet ﷺ, it says that God is saying, my mercy, I divided into 100. Again, these metaphors of the mystics. And I sent one piece of this 100 down to earth. And it is through it that all the mothers love their children, that the earth loves those upon it, all that love, and all the rest 99 is kept up here. So this means this is the channel of the pure love, and this is where the twos immediately bring their love and channeling, devotion, sincerity. They really become saintly. They don't think they're saints, like in the inspired, empowered sense. No, they are the saints. These are the saints of the world. These are the enlightened beings of the world. These are the selfless, energetic, humble, nurturing people of the world. These are the Mother Teresas of the world. This is where Mother Teresa was acting from. And is there beyond that? Do we know anything beyond that? Yes, of course we do. We know the enlightened twos that have walked the earth. We know them in the figure of Jesus, in the figure of Virgin Mary, in the figure of the ancient Egyptian Isis, the mother Isis, the origin of the Virgin Mary, union with the one in love and sacrifice. This is where these enlightened beings brought this love to the earth from. And if you look into all the religious traditions, they all started by an enlightened being. And they were all messed up after that by the gross and subtle beings that started talking on behalf of these enlightened beings. But in their message, you will find their energy. You will find the energy of this enlightened two in Christianity, religion of love. You will find the message of the enlightened nine in Islam, which literally means peace, the religion of peace coming from the nine. You will find the message of the enlightened five and this wisdom and non-attachment in the Buddha and the Buddhist religion. So you will find in each, and I believe Moses was an 8. I believe Jonah was a 1. I believe Solomon was a 3. I believe, and all these are these great enlightened beings that came to show us that in this life, wisdom and light comes in so many flavors. But at the highest level, there is only one realization. Oh, I promised it's the last thing, but I do have to show you one more slide. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It's this slide and it won't take any time. By putting these together, but now in this shape, so I expanded the Wilbur-Combs lattice to have my 7 hearts, which go through the states and the stages. Now the Wilbur-Combs lattice would look like this. But if you really understand these states and stages the way I talked about, then this doesn't make sense. Why? This unavailable lower gross heart does not have the capacity for orange. It does not. Orange needs striving, but this is in grief. This is in shame. This is in sorrow. It doesn't have the energy to strive. It cannot enter orange. The striving self, which has never enough, the heart of the striving self does not have the capacity for green. It does not. Green has gone beyond striving. Green, the heart has encompassed a lot. This empowered self that is just accessing wisdom does not have the capacity for yellow. And the serene self, the illuminated heart, which has not accessed any divine or higher causal powers, does not have capacity for turquoise. So actually, my modification over this, don't tell Wilbur, I don't want him to kill me. Or maybe I should tell him before he kills me, is actually like this. This is actually how this lattice should be. I think so. Maybe tomorrow I'll change my mind. I'm still discovering. So yes, the blue can be awakened. The red can be awakened. The orange, everyone can be awakened. Everyone has the capacity of heart. And that's why the mystics of all time and all humanity have been able to reach the oneness of the heart. regardless of their level of mind. So most of the enlightened people we know about were blue, actually. I mean, look at the Dalai Lama. Can we talk about a more awakened and enlightened person on earth today than the Dalai Lama? Maybe there is, of course. We just don't know them. Definitely there is, but we don't know them. But let's talk about the Dalai Lama. He's definitely up here between these two. Yet he clearly says, when everyone reaches reality, they will realize not that Buddhism is right, that our Tibetan Buddhism is right. Even the other Buddhists are wrong. So this is pure blue. So he is blue, but he's awakened and enlightened. Pure humbleness, and pure humility, pure mysticism. He's up here. So in all time, we've had the capacity to awaken and enlighten. But to grow cognitively, the heart has to reach certain levels to open the door. So there is some connection between the two dimensions. They are not totally separate, as Wilbur Combs say. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me. I mean, 2 hours. How could you bear 2 hours of talking? I don't know. I'm really sorry for this, but as I said, what I was asked for was too much and I had to touch this. So thank you very much for listening and bearing with me. And I'm sorry, I see so many comments on the chat. I will definitely go back to all of them. I hope also I've covered most of the questions. But let's say that if there are questions, please, I will take your hands so you can raise the blue hand. And Martin, please, can you manage from here on? Should we go on? Should we have another question and answer session? Should we take questions from the audience, or should I just answer the questions before? Or what should we do? It's in your hands now, Martin. Wow, I haven't drank for 2 hours. I should drink.
I think it's best if we take questions as they're present now.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be questions.
And I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Questions.
Give priority to the people who are present.
Yes.
And then we can answer the other ones later. I will give priority to the people present. Thank you so much. I agree with that, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please raise this blue hand. You know the blue hand of Zoom, like Batia now has raised it. Please raise that hand and you will be called in turn. So Batia, please come in.
Thank you. Tell us more perhaps about a male 2. I have one in my family, and I just would like to hear more, especially around the nurturing has been considered a feminine trait. So how does a man intermingle that into their masculinity? Is that going to be dependent on their fixations? And yeah. I'll mute.
Yeah, as I started, my father actually was a 2. And he was a very loving, nurturing 2. But the 2, I mean, the 2 and the 8, this is where the shadows come in, but we didn't cover shadows in our topic. 8 is the stereotype of masculinity. 2 is the stereotype of femininity. And 8s in general deny their femininity, and 2s deny their masculinity. That's why the female 8s and the male 2s find a tough time in society. It's as if society doesn't want to accept them as they are. But they cannot not be who they are. So an image of a female 8 would be Wonder Woman, would be Xena Warrior. These are female 8s. They are females, but they own their power and they deny their femininity and emotions. While again, the image of a masculine 2 would be Jesus, with all the love and the care. Okay, not as enlightened as Jesus. How would they look like in the middle levels? Very loving, very caring, denying their power, unable to take stands, yet interfering in everyone's lives around them. I'm talking now from the stereotypical level, from the level of the people we usually see around us. They give advice all the time. They interfere in the lives of everyone around them all the time. They want everyone to connect with everyone. So they connect the family together. Call your uncle, call your cousin. Let's make a party. Let's get the people together. Yet they want to control. When I give you an advice, I'm not expecting a thank you. I'm expecting you to get up and do it because I know better for you. I know what's right for you. So it's not, he calls it an advice, but it's not an advice, it's an order. Because if you don't obey the advice, you don't love them. You're not connected to them. You don't realize their worth and their value. So they actually control through this, getting to know everything about you, interfering in your life, giving you gifts, and giving you advice that you have to listen to. And this becomes the male too. Okay, Batya? Thank you. Any other questions? Wow, nothing at all. Okay, we have Doro. Please lift the blue hand. I see Lucy raising her hand, and no, please lift. There's this raise hand. You will find under participants. If you open participants, all the way down, you find raise hand. So Doro, please come in.
Yeah, you were talking about that social twos. They care for the people surrounding them, and sexual twos they care for their partners, and self-preservative twos, who do they really care for? Somehow I felt like you left it out.
That's a nice question in instincts. Let's look at them again briefly. Yes. Social twos, again, remember the two wants to have an upper hand, but an upper hand through love and desirability. So the social twos serve the group. Sorry?
Low battery.
The social...
Alert from someone. Dash monitor. Low battery.
Sylvia, the mute.
Oh. Ah, yeah, Sylvia. Okay. Yeah. And okay, so the social two wants to have an upper hand over a group. So they serve a group, they take care of a group, take care of a family, a group of friends, an organization. They know the birthdays of everyone, they know the events in the life of everyone, and they care to be the first to help everyone and connect. If someone is sick, they tell the whole group, let's take care of them, let's get the present. So they have an upper hand over a group by serving a group and connecting a group. These are the social twos. Yes. The sexual twos and the sexual energy comes out in the shape of desirability. I want to be desired. And yes, it includes seduction. I want to seduce you. As one sexual two once told me, I want to be like this beautiful flower who everyone passing by has to smell its fragrance and get attracted to, but don't dare to touch. I'll cut your hand off. Another one said, it's like I want you to see me and I grab you. Exactly, she made exactly this action. Grab you, this is seduction. I get you, you fall into my net. But again, I might not want anything from you. This is the sexual energy. Sexual energy is like a flare. It's like this excitement that happens. Once this excitement happens, I might not need anything else. Marilyn Monroe with her, it's like this seduction. the seduction of Marilyn Monroe is like curves, and there's always a bit of a mystery. I don't uncover my body. I uncover a bit to let you imagine the rest, so that I seduce your brain to fall after me, so you desire me. It's the sexual too. I want to be desired. Now, it doesn't have to be in the sexual sense. Again, when I say things like this, I'm stereotyping. I'm exaggerating to give the meaning. You will not see them like that, walking in the street going like this. But this is what their inner sense is. I want you to desire me. I want you, because it's through this desirability that I will have this indispensability. Remember, all the twos want to be indispensable. So by serving the group, the social. By desire, the sexual. Now we go to the self-preservation. And the self-preservation is called the counter type, because it doesn't make sense. Self-preservation is about my needs. Two is about your needs. So it's as if the energy of the type and the sub and the instinct go against each other. But actually, in reality, they never go against each other. We have a way of aligning them. I like to teach that the instinct is what I want, and the type is how I get it. The instinct defines what I want. The type defines the strategy I use to get it. So what's the strategy of the twos? I give so that you need me. What's the need of the self-preservation? I need to take care of myself. So what does the self-preservation do? I take care of you in the things that I need to be taken care of in. I'm hungry, I feed you. I'm cold, I dress you. I'm running out of money, I give you money. I need to drink a cup of tea. My father in his old age, and one of my theories, again, it's not in Enneagram books, but all the elders, everyone, when they start getting old or start losing their health, the self-preservation becomes high, regardless of what your original instinct was. Self-preservation kicks in. So my father, who was a social too, but had self-preservation secondary, could never ask for a cup of tea. He lost his eyesight, he could hardly move, he's living, but he can't ask us to eat. So how do we know that he wants to drink a cup of coffee? Khaled, don't you want to drink coffee? No, Dad, I don't want to drink coffee. I see he's totally disappointed. It was Natasha with her social intelligence, of course, myself as a 5 with 0 social and emotional intelligence. I didn't get it until Natasha pointed out to me. When he says, wow, there are very nice smells coming from the kitchen, he means I'm hungry and I want to eat. When he says, Khaled, I feel you're tired and you need to go to sleep, he means he wants me to help him to take him to bed so he can go to sleep. So the self-preservation too serves you in what they need to be served in, as if pointing to you, take care of me in this area. Make sense, Doro?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doro. Orion Sai. Did I pronounce it right? I'm sorry if I pronounced names wrong.
Perfect. Many names, one destination. All good. I wanted to know what it would take for you to have the courage to take the risk to be killed by Ken. I think that
well, maybe
epic.
Maybe I would need, I think, to take it. I mean, everything I've done until now has been teaching. I have a very extensive set of teachings, and I need to sit down and write this down. So maybe to be able to approach Ken, I need to write my stages of mind, my stages of heart, and then reach the lattice. Now, this is a 5 talking and talking too much, so we'll never get anywhere. So maybe the other direction would be just to write what I said today, or actually just send him this presentation. I don't know, but maybe just a little push, a little nagging, and I might get it done. Maybe nag my wife to nag. Nag my wife to nag me. I got the idea. Yeah, that's the solution.
Here's the push, you know. The clock is ticking for that fight, in my opinion. So don't wait too long.
So maybe I should do it. And by the way, this is the first time ever I publicly display this. I mean, it's always been brewing. So maybe the time is coming soon. Thank you, Orion. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Maybe this is the push that's missing. Thank you, Orion. Lucy.
Yes, hi, great presentation, amazing. And the part that interests me is when you talked about levels of maturity, and I realize that's a little bit on a sideline, and I'm very interested if you found any specific either website, teacher, book, or if you've developed something about that.
Okay, so we talked about two directions of maturity, the mental maturity, the cognitive maturity, let's say, and the heart maturity. And each one of them has its different sources. So the cognitive maturity, there isn't much work done between the spiral and the Enneagram. There is little work you will find. So there is one article by an American institute by a teacher called Deborah Uten and Beth O'Hara. They made some work and they made an article on their website, but they never went any deeper. I heard there's a book in German, but I don't have access to it, and it was not translated into English, that I think did the same thing. Maybe Martin can help us out there. But other than that, I haven't seen really anything serious. So I have contacted Deborah, I've taken some work with her, but then I built my model based on that. So that's the only work in this direction.
And how do you spell
in the heart direction?
Deborah Uten, and this is from your very first chart where you talked about maturities?
Yes, maturity, I mean level of development in these two directions, in the spiral direction and in the heart direction. So Deborah, D-E-B-O-R-A-H, Deborah Uten, O-O-T-E-N. She did some work like 20 years ago, but I don't know why she didn't go on after that. As I said, I think there's an even more comprehensive book in German, but I'm not aware of it. But those were both purely spiral. But what I did is, as I said, I built a model around that. That's why it's time to write it down. For the heart side, that's much more complex. And that's actually where this is really where my model, my contribution is in. Because that was gathering from so many spiritual and mystic writings around the world. So for example, on this chart, I'll show you this chart here. If you see here, for example, these level 1 to level 9, this is the work of Don Rizzo and Russ Hudson in their book, Personality Types, where they studied the development and maturity of Enneagram levels, but they reached what they call the essential qualities. And in my research, this is as far as the essential qualities go. So they don't cover this upper range here. They don't cover the causal and the mystic range.
We can't see it, Khaled.
You can't see it? Sorry. Why can't you see it?
I can see it. I can see it.
I think I'm still sharing the screen. Yeah, I'm still sharing the screen. Yeah, it's there. So this is as far as they went. And then, as I said, the cloud of unknowing is actually from the subtle up. So it's not covering the lower area. The Sufis were only talking about some aspects of the self. The Buddhists talk from a different dimension. So I realized that everyone is talking about the same journey. Everyone is climbing the mountain, but from different directions. So this is where I had to put all this together into the stages of the heart model. So you will not really find here, you would go to my website, you will find a few articles I put. And as Orion said, I now should really put more out. I put them out 2 years ago, and then I don't know why I stopped. But you will find one of the article calls Stages of the Heart. It was when I first started thinking of the model. It's not at all as mature as it is here. But there you will also find some ideas. Some ideas from Wilbur, some ideas from David Hawkins. David Hawkins, if you've heard about him, he has some lovely books. But in his books, I always say, my advice, if you're reading Hawkins' books, he has like 2 philosophies. One is his awakening philosophy, and that is purely enlightened. It's magnificent. And the other is his fixation numbers and measurements. And that is totally messed up. So people sometimes get offended by Hawkins because of all these judgmental numbers and scales. Try to look beyond the scale and into really the wisdom he's writing, purely enlightened. So I depended a lot on Hawkins, on Rizzo and Hudson, on the Sufis, on some of the Buddhist work, for bits from here and there, and I found this model and I just started writing about it or started teaching it. Could be Deborah. I saw Deborah saying to be transcribed. Thank you, Deborah. That's a good idea. Maybe we can do that. And we'll take the last question from Lucy. Is that okay? Is the answer enough? I gave some references. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, sir, we'll take the last question from Sergi.
Thank you so much for so inspired and fired from our inside presentation. I can feel how deeply you involved and going from your heart. Sorry for my English, and it's pretty late night in Russia. So anyway, I just want to ask a simple thing maybe. Why you called the horizontal scale heart scale? What it's in front of maturity and heart. Why you called heart levels?
Yeah, the heart in mystical and spiritual writings is this energetic capacity of humans to know without thinking. The Sufis call it al-arifin, which would translate exactly into the knowers. The Christian mysticism calls them the Gnostics. Gnosticism is knowing without thinking. Thinking is the function of the mind. The thinking mind, the emotional mind is thinking by emotions. The language of the emotional mind is thinking by emotions. The language of the mental mind is thinking by thoughts. The language of the body mind is thinking by sensations. So sensations, emotions, and thoughts is the language of the mind. But the heart, this spiritual heart, this spiritual capacity for knowing is this function that we have, this capacity of consciousness, what sees from beyond our eyes, this place of witness, this place of freedom from the 3 or 4 dimensional world. And it's there that we know. We know something that cannot be described by the tongue. But to get there, we have to free ourselves from identification with the gross 3-dimensional world and with the subtle 4-dimensional world. We need to it's not free ourselves from the world. On the contrary, we become enlightened beings on the world. It's again, as I drew in circles, we become larger than it. So this is the heart. This is what's meant by the heart. It's not the emotional brain. And there are always figures if you look into the mystical traditions, you will find figures that represent this Gnostic knowing. So the Sufis, and in Islam, there is this figure called Al-Khidr, which they call in English the green pole. The Sufis like to call about pole, which means enlightened saints. So the green pole is this person that has this channel of knowledge and wisdom to the earth. In the Christian tradition, there is this archangel Metatron. So Metatron represents the source of wisdom and knowledge beyond thinking. It's I know because I know. This is the I know of Carl Jung when he was asked, do you believe in God? And he said, I don't believe, I know. The heart, we say, the mind is full of doubts. Some people always ask me, how do I know the voice of the mind and the voice of the heart? And I have a very simple statement. The mind is full of doubts. The heart just knows. The heart knows. It's just a voice that tells you this is the truth. And you cannot confuse it unless the mind rides over and you identify with the mind and you fall into this doubt and confusion. But the heart just knows. So the heart is an organ. It's not a physical organ. It's an energetic, or even beyond energetic. It's a capacity of knowing. It's an organ of knowing, but true knowing. So it's just a spiritual terminology, Sergey.
Mm-hmm. So if I understood you correctly, you opposite vertical line of maturity, horizontal line of states of consciousness, like heart, what symbolize unconceptual knowledge, yeah?
Yes, you could say that, or you
underline it. Emphasize.
Yeah, you could say, sometimes I like to say it also for people to grasp it, the vertical growth is growth in this world. Mm-hmm. I say that God, the divine, gives the kingdom of this world to the higher in this vertical line. Whoever is higher here rules the world. For example, let me give an example here. If you look at the Middle Ages, for like 1,000 years, 1,000 years of fighting between the world of Christianity and the world of Islam. Two blue worlds going and coming, ebbing and flowing. The Muslims go and take half of Europe, and then the Christians bring the Crusades and take Jerusalem, and then the Muslims siege Vienna, and then the Christians come, and it's just ebbing and flowing. Two blue groups fighting with each other. Mm-hmm. At the end, who won? No one. At the end, a little small foggy island in the middle of the ocean where no one wanted to go because they had no resources and because their situation didn't allow them to fight this blue fight, and because they were not ruled strong enough that the blue was taking the resources of everything in the society, they had the capacity to go beyond the blue into this orange level, and in no time they destroyed the armada of the Spanish, they destroyed the armies of the Ottomans and the Austrians, and in 100 years they took over the world and they wiped out both the Christian and the Muslim worlds. And they created a totally new civilization out of this orange. So once a civilization reaches a certain mass, critical mass, higher in cognitive consciousness than the previous civilizations, it takes over the world. So this world is given to the higher cognitively. But that does not guarantee no suffering. This vertical line does not guarantee growth in the heart.
Yeah.
And human suffering and human love and living peacefully and dying peacefully and eternally staying in a state of peace depends on the level of the heart not the level of the mind. So this world is given to the higher cognitive level, but eternal life is given to the higher heart level.
But will
And
there
usually they start out each other. Again, this is very metaphorical, very simplifying the thing, but just to imagine how things are. So a red or a blue person up here is living a much better life than someone in green that is down here. They're not suffering. They are living a peaceful life.
But Wilber says about a lot of vertical lines, not only cognitive lines. As I understand, there are a lot of lines, even spiritual,
Yeah.
is a spiritual line, vertical line, and sexual, and emotional, and so it's a little bit confusing. But it seems to me I got it. It's like a unconceptual line of being. And by the way, Wilber, as if I remember correctly, Wilber say about connection. So your scheme is very valuable because there is a connection. There is a limitation you mentioned. Wilber talking about this connection between as I understood him, he emphasized.
He added it at the end of the cognitive when he started putting this meta mind and paramind and super mind. So he put the connection up there.
Yeah.
But in a very different way than this. It's a very different way than this. But it would work because actually, if you look at it this way like this, then it's just going up like this. It's just going up in this diagonal line.
And anyway, it's very deep and embracing knowledge and work you've done. Thank you so much. Thank you, Martin, as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. And Martin, please take over. And thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. Martin?
Thank you so much, Khaled. First of all, I deeply feel your passion, right? And I think it's inspiring. I mean, what's inspiring me the most is like this meeting of the Western and the Middle Eastern heart and heart, the Western mind with the Middle Eastern heart that you're integrating so beautifully. Yeah, it definitely feels like we should have an encore if you're available to this, and maybe then we can get to all the questions that have been left unanswered, and maybe new questions come up as people watch this and digest it.
Sure. Maybe you can just make a Q&A session. People to digest this and listen to the audio and then come back just for a discussion. Just even not a Q&A. Call it a discussion.
Yeah, yes. And I also really want to encourage you to offer this to the world, through Zoom or through writing in some way. So that would be beautiful, and take it outside the Arab-speaking world, so to speak.
I'll take that seriously, and it means a lot to me to come from you in this community to hear this.
Yeah,
it gives me, let's say, the confidence to do that. So thank you so much for saying that. Thank you.
And as you see, Laura already asked, do you have a book, Khaled? So I think you have really something important to contribute, coming from this Sufi background. The heart is often what people say is missing in integral theory. And, I think you provide a wonderful bridge or addition, or whatever we want to call, a higher level of integration of, bringing in heart into the whole integral model. So that's beautiful and very needed.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for all the comments I see coming on the chat. This is really incredible. Thank you all so much. Thank you really so much.
So we'll be in touch, Khaled, and then we'll see what we can schedule and what you're available for.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. Thank you all. Thank you all. Love you all. Really love to everyone here. I feel the energy of everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, much love to
Thank you,
Khaled.
Martin. Thank you, Martin. I cannot thank you enough, Martin. Thank you.
Well, we thank you for your generosity.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, so I will end the meeting. I think I have control here. So I'll end the meeting now.
Very control. You can maybe stop sharing your screen so people can see each other who are still here. Can you stop sharing your screen for a moment? So we just...
And stop the recording.
Yeah, we can stop the recording.